Man, Barry is just going bigger and bigger and bigger every week with the intro music. Thank you. Welcome to the Republican Voters Against Trump live stream. I'm Tim Miller. Here with me today, I finally get to turn the tables on Charlie Sykes, whose podcast at the Bulwark I've been on many times. I hope you all are listening to. We have newly minted celebrity Deb from Wisconsin, who was pretty famous from her RVAT video, which I'm sure many of you saw, but got really, really famous when it was aired at the Democratic National Convention twice. And we have Mark, also from Wisconsin, who got a little less fame when he was spoofed by the great J.L. Colvin, who is the best Donald Trump impersonator out there. If you haven't seen him, we'll have to reshare that. So thank you guys all for being with us. We're doing this every week. We're giving you a behind the scenes look at what RVAT's up to. We want to talk a little strategy. We want to take your questions. But this week we thought with the DNC being in Wisconsin, it was a good chance to just do all Wisconsin all the time, at least till we get to your questions, and bring in the experts. When you look at the data for 2020 and you look at what the most likely state is to be the tipping point state, Wisconsin comes to the top of the list every time. Maybe Pennsylvania, maybe Wisconsin. This is where the fight is going to be. This was one of the first states we went into with advertising with RVAT, the first states we went into with recruiting people. Deb was one of the first people we called to recruit to do a video before we even had a website up. So this is a massive priority, so we want to hear about it a little bit. I would usually start with Charlie, but Deb, since you've now eclipsed him in fame, I want to go to you first. Tell us what has the feedback been since the DNC appearance, and what's your sense of things? And tell people where you a little bit about yourself. Tell people where you live in Wisconsin.
I'm in Spring Green. I'm in Spring Green, Wisconsin, 45 minutes west of Madison. And my husband pastors a church we planted 20 years ago here in town. He also works for Madison Gas and Electric, so he commutes when it's not a pandemic. Making that video was a big step for me. It was it was a good time, a chance to voice my opinion. I was like screaming in my car, and I really wanted to have more. So when I found RVAT, I was more than happy to do a video. It has stirred up some controversy. I've got liberal friends that are thrilled. They think I'm very brave and courageous, and I've got conservative friends that have referred to me as baby killer or have not wanted to have much to do with me anymore. But, like John Lewis says, you have to cause some good trouble. And
well, I want to get back to that a little bit before we go around, but I do, just as far as the convention is concerned, it's hard for us to tell. We're in this sort of bubble. We're already in a bubble of political dorks. Charlie's not, but most of the RVAT people and Bulwark people are either in DC or I'm out here in California. So did your friends see it? I mean, are people even watching the DNC convention out of our bubbles? Did you hear from anyone after you showed on screen? Or are you getting the sense that it's just kind of a junkies only thing?
Not a lot of my conservative friends watch the DNC, but people recorded it and put it on Facebook, and then it gets shared, and then eventually it gets to everybody. And so the people that shared it were like, this is awesome, this is great. And I'm like kind of sitting back, bracing myself for the trickle down effect. But overall, the DNC experience was very good. I've got people that are sharing it with my liberal friends are sharing it with their conservative friends and using it as a talking point. And
that's great.
That encourages me.
That's the whole point. Mark, really quick, which part of the state are you in? For people who haven't seen your video, give us a quick rundown and tell us, what kind of feedback you've gotten since going public.
Yeah, so I'm from Green Bay, Brown County, Wisconsin. So that's like the epicenter. That's ground zero. And Charlie, I think, can attest to how purple that area is. Just
really quick aside, I wanted to bring this up. We did a big, before you get into Green Bay, so viewers know how important this is. You're the party chairman there, right? for a little while, 2016, Republican Party chairman. We just got back, so this is a little behind the scenes scoop, some data from Republican voters against Trump, where we tried to figure out who are the gettable Republicans in the state of Wisconsin and where they are. And I was surprised to see that the Green Bay market was kind of punching above its weight through the rest of the state. Milwaukee suburbs, and we'll talk about this more with Charlie, is the obvious choice. But the other place where there was, not a huge bump, but a larger percentage of Republicans than elsewhere in the state in Green Bay were receptive to our message.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is, and Charlie, I think, can attest to this, and not to get too wonky, but there's a lot of people that are like an Obama Reed Ribble voter, and there's tens of thousands of people in this area that crossed the ticket to vote for a Republican and a Democrat in both 2008 and 2012, right? So there's a lot of it's good farming over here for you guys in Brown County.
And so what are you hearing on the ground, particularly recently? I do think people's, well, I guess with the pandemic, you're probably not seeing as many people as you used to casually. But generally, what we've found in focus groups is that the tone about the president has changed a bit over the last few months with the pandemic, with George Floyd. Are you seeing that among your sort of social group, or are you not talking about this? Or how does it work?
Yeah, you're kind of in a bubble, like you said before, but some of the people that I'm seeing online, especially locally here, the conversation has shifted from back in 2016 it was he's going to tell it like it is, he's going to do this, he's this big bully that's gonna shake things up, and people are like, well, so he's still going to make America great again, right? And so it's kind of shifted from this is what he's going to do to let's give him a do-over because, God forbid we have those evil Democrats. So that's kind of how things have shifted. The racism and some of the xenophobia and the bigotry is becoming a lot more pronounced now.
Interesting. Why do you say that? Over what? Over the George Floyd stuff?
I think with George Floyd, with there's a huge focus on race right now.
Yeah.
And now that Kamala Harris is the VP, that also adds another layer to it as well. So it's really interesting, and it's sad at the same time. But I think from her speech, I was talking to my wife about this last night. Back in the day when I was a kid, we would sit down on the 4th of July and we would watch a Capitol 4th with my family. And as a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old, just seeing all these people come together and talk about pride for the country, coming together regardless of their political affiliations, because we know that there is good here. I felt that watching some of the speeches that we've seen over the convention, and seeing some people like John Kasich and some other Republicans and some conservatives like you, Charlie, some of the things that you guys have done. It's really an inspiring thing.
I want to get back to that. I'm going to come back to you on one of those points. But Charlie, put on your Wisconsin hat. Take off your big-time pundit MSNBC hat. What are you feeling about in Wisconsin as it compares to 4 years ago? Are you getting what did you think about the convention? What was the messages that you saw in the convention, something that you think will resonate there, with the types of voters that Joe Biden needs to get?
Well, let me answer the second part of your question. I have really been surprised at the tone of the Democratic convention and how they really do seem to be talking to folks like us. I mean, let's be honest about it. It's very, very uncomfortable for many of us to align ourselves with a party that we've been fighting against for the last 20 years or more. And there are a lot of issues that are come close to being deal breakers. And I really get the sense that the Biden campaign is thinking about exactly this kind of voter, saying, look, we're not crazy. We are not extreme. Remember when we all used to be able to celebrate these shared values of respect for the Constitution and human decency and all of this? So I've actually been rather struck by how welcoming this has been. I mean, the contrast between the Trump campaign, which is burn it all down, liberal tears, we're going to fight for our base, versus this, hey, you guys are kind of welcome. Now, going to the earlier part of the question, maybe I'll get to it in just a second. look, part of the phenomenon why we're all here is it feels very lonely to be a Republican who is not on board. You do feel like you are out in the wilderness, that we're not just out in the wilderness, we're on this tiny little desert island, and everybody else, has gone through the invasion of the body snatchers experience where they've gone, we have to get on board. So, what you guys have been doing has been so powerful. You talk about the permission structure. It means a lot to see a John Kasich or a Charlie Dent or a Colin Powell or Christy Todd Whitman, others who are standing up and saying, look, we've been Republicans our whole lives, but we think that we can do this. That Donald Trump is such, look, I mean, part of the question is how you see Donald Trump. If you see him on the normal political perspective, continuum of right versus left, then he's just you might want to think of him as a conservative with bad manners, and if he gives you judges, you go along. But if you actually look at the man and you go, no, this guy is off the charts, the corruption, the narcissism, the bad judgment, the bigotry, all of that stuff, then you realize that you have to make new alliances. And I just never have thought that Donald Trump was a good fit for Wisconsin. The only reason right now that he's competitive is this negative partisanship, that we were talking about before, that the Democrats are just so evil, that they hate America so intensely. They hate God, they hate the flag, they hate the Green Bay Packers or something like that.
Whoa.
But that's what makes this convention so interesting, because I'm looking at them going, these are normal human beings, right? So I also think the reference of people like, by the way, I'm also amazed at the fact that the whole Green Bay Fox Valley area is still in play, because that went really Trumpy there for a while. But you heard the name Reed Ribble. Reed Ribble is a former congressman, very conservative Republican who was never Trump from the beginning, one of the few people who has not changed. And so I think that there are people out there that say, I've never voted for a Democrat before. I can't take this. I just can't take this. And when they see other people like you and people like Reed Ribble out there, they go, okay, so I'm not a freak. There are people like me who share the same sort of value. And I think that's really what's powerful in a state like Wisconsin.
And this is so important. It's why I'm going to do this plug right now. It's why we want, if you're watching this and you've been thinking I should do a video, why you should do a video, because it does make a difference. It does trickle down. Deb and I were talking about this a little bit yesterday, and if you wouldn't mind sharing, you kind of had this experience in your community with kind of a little furtive group, I think, of friends who were Republicans who felt alienated, and the group has sort of grown. Will you tell people about that a little bit?
We had I was contacted by some evangelicals in the church in town saying that we've heard that you aren't real happy with the president. We'd like to start a little support group just to get together and kind of be together. And we started with 4 couples, and now we've doubled in size. My neighbor down the street heard about it, and she's like, "Can I come?" I had no idea that you guys existed, and we're adding more and more people as it goes along. But sometimes we just sit and complain a little, and then we just sit and wait, and then we're like, okay, let's try to be positive about something. And we do end up encouraging each other in some way, but we also encourage each other in ways that we can take action. And we also spend a little time in prayer, because we do believe that God does hear us, and that we aren't really thinking he's on Trump's side. So
I just love to hear that so much. And I think that I think a lot of the liberals and like kind of media members I talk to about our project don't really appreciate like how big of a loss this is for some people, right? Like for people like us, right? Like being a Republican, being a Christian Republican is like a big part of people's identity. And it's all wrapped up at, and it's a silly thing, but like my LinkedIn profile is like Tim Miller GOP. Like that's how much it was part of my identity. It was in the damn URL. Like it's part of, and so when you lose something that is such a part of your identity, and when you don't just lose it, but lose it in a way that that makes you disgusted, really, by something that's part of yourself, it is painful and it does hurt. And so seeing and hearing from other people, I think the support group is so cool. getting people to watch these other videos does make a difference. It helps nudge people. Maybe it's a person who will never get there for Joe Biden, but we can just nudge them to say, hey, I'm going to sit this one out.
There's a phenomenon in Wisconsin that I can't quantify, but I go to a lake house that's north of Milwaukee that I sometimes will tweet about. And when I sit there and look at the beautiful lake and the beautiful sunset, in the horizon, there are 5 Trump flags flying right in my face. Okay, so there are there have been people who have had the boats with the Trump flag, but so this notion that there are shy Trump voters out there. Most of the Trump voters around here are very much in your face. So I wonder whether there is these shy non-Trump voter folks like you, us, who basically our entire social and political network has gone Trumpy, and so we are the ones left out. And so, try posting on Facebook. Try doing any of those things, and you know what I'm talking about here. Yeah. So I do wonder. I think that there are those soft, maybe people who didn't vote for Trump back in 2016 or held their nose because they were just disillusioned with Hillary, who they may not be willing to come out and say it because they think they're complete freaks. They think everybody else is on board because they're the ones with the boat parades. They're the ones with the flag. But I think Wisconsin is one of those states where I think you need to look for the shy non-Trump Republican voter.
Well, I do have a little bit of bad news for everybody, is that votes count twice, actually. So that is going to be an advantage for Trump in November. Mark, I want to hear, I have a specific question for you before I get to it. Any experiences you've had since you posted where people were, I guess since you were party chair, people knew kind of that you were an apostate already, but talk about that.
Yeah, when I was chairman, I always was kind of the fiscal conservative with the social conscience. I was someone that I came out in support of marriage equality when that debate was going on. My older brother's gay, and I think, if we go the God route, I think if God created my brother like that and God doesn't make mistakes, then I don't think he should be punished with fire and fury for living for who he is. So I was always kind of on that side, and every speech that I gave as a Republican chairman, I always told people that Democrats aren't the enemy, right? Republicans and Democrats share the same goal, and they want to make a more perfect union. We just had a different way of getting there. They're not the enemy, right? So I was always kind of, and I rubbed the old hard.
I want to just because you're going down a path that I wanted to ask you. But you said in your video, and correct me if I'm wrong. You said I think your brother's gay and your wife is a person of color. I think you said in your video, and this is an experience I have as well. I have black people in my family. I'm gay, and I think that there's something about. I feel in some ways lucky, right, that I'm gay because it gave me a window into, the cruelty of Donald Trump and help people experience that in a way that I think that some people didn't have, they just, maybe, I'm not trying to indict them and saying they're bad people. It's just they don't get, they think it's funny because they've never been on the other side. And so I'm wondering if you feel like that in other kind of conversations you've had, that's something that's resonated.
I think something that really has frustrated me about where the party is now and what Trump has done is, he's really given the people that have those views, the racist, the bigotry, all that, he's given them such a platform and a petri dish to fester and grow and just, it's been really awful. And so, it's like the Tea Party 2.0, and that is filled with a lot of values that, the Republican Party that myself and Charlie, we all don't identify with because that's just wrong, and so, it is tough. And I think the people that have seen my video, for the most part, have appreciated what I had to say. Of course, there are people that saw it that weren't terribly pleased. It's being y'all were putting it up and kind of boosting it where I work, And so my
oh gosh, really?
Oh, yeah,
that was just a coincidence, actually. Well, maybe it's our great digital team trolling your coworkers. I don't know, but no,
right.
we are boosting obviously stories from people in Wisconsin to people in Wisconsin. It carries more weight. We see that in tests. So I didn't realize we were micro targeting that well.
Nice. And I think it's awesome. I think it's great, and it spurs conversation. And I just,
any of those conversations valuable, or was it a lot of trash talk?
It's I've been in the political field for a while, and you kind of are able to navigate what's crap and what's something you can salvage. And there's a lot of crap in there. So yeah.
Well, hey, I want to. I've got two questions for Deb and Mark, and I'm going to let you guys go, and then me and Charlie are going to get wonky with politics. My questions for you. One is from Matt here, and keep sending us questions in the chat. He wants to know: Did you guys feel? Did you guys feel any less alone after making these? No, he looks cute. That's great. Did you feel alone at all before you started this project? Matt said he's feeling kind of alone about his politics. Talk about how you got over that. And number two, just tell us. You're the expert. You live there in Green Bay. What should we be emphasizing? What should we be talking about more?
I missed the first question.
The first one was no worries. The first one was from Matt, which is, did you feel alone at all before starting to speak out about this? And then the second one is from me, and that is, what should we be doing better? How can we break through in Wisconsin with people you know?
Yeah, I mean, it was lonely speaking out because, I spent 10 years on the Republican side fighting really deep trenches, right in the trenches with a lot of people. And so, it was, for me, a tough thing to kind of shake it loose and say, what the hell are you doing? Like, all the values that we thought were important. I mean, I was a pro-choice, pro-marriage equality Republican. And I thought, when I was chairman, I said, this is the party of the Big Ten. There is a place for someone like me in this party. And now, because you got this ass hat, now all of a sudden that tent isn't there anymore. So it was a huge shock to a lot of people in my circle. Obviously, it's not a shock anymore, but I think it's just harping on this message that, if you're a Republican, you get a pass this time if you want to vote for a Democrat.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, and if you
temporary
are fix. But if you are a Republican, Trump is not. He is someone that that spends an astronomical amount of money. He is someone that doesn't care about the Constitution and the things that we would fight for. That's not him, right? And
totally
sorry.
agree. No, that's awesome. Totally agree. It's exactly right on. Go Packers. Thank you for getting on. Go Broncos, actually. But I appreciate your time. And everybody go watch Mark's video. It's on RVAT, and you can go watch JL Colvin. You can Google him. He trolled Mark. It was pretty funny. I think he said you had male cheerleader energy. Backup male cheerleader energy. That was pretty good. Deb, our question for you, and then I'll let you go. This is from Jeff. He says, why do you think that so many evangelicals haven't done what you've done? What's the wall that's preventing them from doing it?
I think it's primarily the bubble they live in. They aren't really willing to look at Trump for who he really is. They would prefer the news sources they have. If I say things that are negative about him, they're saying, "Oh, you're just complaining. You just don't like the guy." And just from the people I know personally, they won't watch news sources that will, I think, tell them the truth. And so it's just not even on their radar. So that's why we seek to talk to people one-on-one.
Yeah.
Well, we are here to pop the bubble. That's what RVAT's about. Thank you guys so much for telling people your story, for coming doing this live thing. Me and Charlie are going to stay and get nerdy with a little politics for about 15 more minutes. If people want to stay and ask questions in the comments. So thank you, Deb. Thank you, Mark. You guys are free. Charlie, this rapid fire from Tim.
Okay, George, do I have to put on my pundit hat?
Yeah, pundit hat's back on. What is that one? Now, how the right lost its mind, and a book plug, a pundit and a book plug. That's great. Is Ohio a lost cause for Joe Biden? What do you think?
Well, I think it's going to be harder to win than Wisconsin, but I don't think anything's a lost cause right now. I mean, I think, after this convention, I think we're going to see how things shake out. And the fact that Ohio is, in fact, a battleground, I think shows the way that the electorate has shifted. I certainly would not write it off as a lost cause right now. Because let's face it, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Minnesota are really quite similar in terms of the demographics, in terms of the political dynamics. If Donald Trump has to play defense in Ohio, he's in trouble.
That is right. And quick news item on that, obviously, with RVAT, if you don't know, with the Lincoln Project, we have a co-project in Ohio called Operation Grant. And then we may have some more stuff coming on that front, so keep an eye out for that. Okay, Charlie, we've got here, this one was from, it was kind of what you mentioned the DNC earlier, so I want to hear you expand on it from Stephen. Have the Democrats successfully changed the narrative from there being crazy anti-American socialists since Bernie lost the primary? Has Biden and the Democrats been successful at changing that narrative, do you think?
Well, ask me on November 4th whether they've been successful at doing it. But what's interesting is they've really been trying to do it. I think they understand that that's the problem. That right now, the heart of the Republican message is just the crazy awfulness of the Democratic Party. They want to run against AOC. They want to run against Bernie. They want to make Joe Biden into the Antifa candidate. And this convention really is a strong counterpoint to all of that. So they're making an effort. And I got to say, I'm quite struck by that.
Yeah, I was talking with Bill Kristol about this morning, and he said the same, almost a little awkward, kind of how like they've gone a little overboard, maybe even, in appealing to us, and which is wonderful. But I mean, you can see where the Biden's head is at about this, and I wrote about this morning. But like Biden also has been very good, the way that he just completely shot down Linda Sarsour. For people who don't know, Linda Sarsour is kind of a far left anti-Semitic activist who was part of the Women's March. She appeared at a DNC thing, but there's a lot of outrage about this. And Biden's campaign just shot it right down, which is, I think another side that they're very conscious of this.
It's very good. And by the way, going back to your point and Deb's point, do not underestimate, though, how hard it is to break through these bubbles here, the alternative reality silos. You and I may think, well, this is a big story, and hey, look what's going on here. My experience of being a radio talk show host here is it is remarkable how a big story might not have any impact whatsoever on 45% of the electorate because they will never hear it, which is why this one-on-one contact is so powerful that if you can one-on-one communicate with somebody on Facebook with messages like this, it really is the most you can do. Everybody has a circle of influence. And I think people are maybe more open-minded than you think.
I had one more question. I'm going to go to the plug question here, since you're so good at this as an old-time radio host with the plugs from Christian. How can people help get involved? This is the thing. You might go to our website and see, hey, there are already 600 videos. I don't need another one. That is not true. We are going for scale here. The more videos we have, particularly in the swing states, particularly if you're in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona, North Carolina, Florida, Michigan, Ohio, Georgia, Texas, even maybe, Iowa. If you're in those states in particular, your video posts to our page, but also hopefully to your Facebook page, and your friends post it, and there's this network effect. Deb mentioned this to us. I don't think she did on this call, but when I was talking to her after she was on the DNC, where she said, she heard from a cousin in another state that had posted her her video. And so, this is how we can break through the unreality bubble. Okay, Charlie, here comes the burn it down question that you always are going to get. It is from Rick. Do you believe the GOP will ever recover, or do sane center-right voters need a new party?
Boy, I don't know. It is not going to be easy to bring this party back. Every single day, it gets worse and worse and worse. When people say burn it down, what I think we're really talking about is that if you're going to ever save the Republican Party, it's not just enough to defeat Donald Trump. You have to defeat the Trumpist bootlickers as well, the people who've enabled this, the people who've rationalized this and defended it. I mean, this party has to realize that it will pay a price for the choices that it's making. I don't know. I will tell you, Tim, I think I've told you this one-on-one. My time horizon right now is just November. The house is burning down right now. There's the emergency now. Let's put the fire out. We'll worry about the redecorating later. It's going to be a long process. It's not going to be easy. And, I'll be honest with you. It's very hard for me to imagine going back to the way things were before, or having the same friendships, relationships, and trusts that we had before Trump came along. And, Wisconsin's a perfect example of what's happened.
Yeah, we're totally aligned on this. And I just add one thing. It's notable that the Biden win changes this conversation in a big way. And you can see, there's been this movement, of now there have been some blue collar, working class white guys who are culturally conservative, but union guys who've moved into the Trump party. But there's been a big move of people who voted for George W. Bush, the security moms in the suburbs, who are now pretty much Democrats now. And the African American vote, as we saw in the primary, is not as liberal as the wing of the Democratic Party. So right now, they are doing a better job of kind of appealing to this center demographic, and I don't know that can hold forever. But that just might be the marriage of convenience for a little while. I don't know. I do want to mention one more thing, because Christian asked how people can help and get involved. What if you are not a Republican voter against Trump who wants to help and get involved? You can post the video on your Facebook, your social media. Again, I keep talking about Facebook, but that is where a lot of Trump and Trump-curious voters are getting their news. It's not these other social platforms. Posting on Facebook is important. You can chip in $5, as Mark said. We're so good, I didn't even know it. We're micro-targeting him to his own colleagues at work. But we are taking the best videos. We're testing them, seeing which ones are the most persuasive, and then we're promoting them to people in the swing states. Pitching a few bucks, you can help us do that. Charlie, I want to ask you about. I wrote about him this morning. Last week, RVAT released a video of Miles Taylor.
Awesome.
And I've gotten some mixed reviews on that. I mean, it's been powerful, I think, for people because of his close access to the president. But at the same time, he was not just a little, and he was very much involved in some of the terrible things that the Trump administration did at DHS. So when you see a video like that, what's your response, and what do you think the impact is?
Well, my first response was good for him for speaking out, because he's going to pay a huge price for it. And he saw things, and he understands the importance of sharing that right now. And here's somebody who was in the room, and his stories are graphic, and they're vivid, and they're important. When you talk about the president withholding disaster aid to people who are suffering because they might not be members of his base, I mean, this is shocking stuff. So I do think that's powerful. I think it's probably the most impactful thing that you've done. But I will say that the one-on-one make your pitch, and I'm not trying to be nice here, Tim, because I don't really like you. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, that's great. My next question note here is list your favorite Bulwark writers 1 to 10.
Oh, so Tim would be number one. But the power of this one-on-one stuff it cannot be overstated, because you asked before, do you feel alone? I still feel alone. I mean, honestly, I went from being very much at the center of the Republican Party in Wisconsin. People like, Scott Walker and Paul Ryan and Ron Johnson were personal friends of mine. Reince Priebus are personal friends of mine. They've been here in this house. And now I'm not just alienated from them personally, but alienated from everything that we did for all of those years. So the sense of isolation is really profound. And so Well, people are not gonna change their minds because they watch MSNBC. They're gonna change their minds because they hear their neighbors. Someone who they know shares their values, who they can trust, and that's the magic of these videos, which I think are. And I have to say that I came very close to sort of despairing. Like, can you ever change anybody's mind? Is everybody fixed in? Is the tribalism burnt in? But I see these videos and I think, that might actually touch people. And in a state like Wisconsin, you don't need to move a huge number of people. If 8% of the electorate are Biden Republicans, that will be enough to tip the balance.
For sure. Patrice, I love you, asked where you can donate, RVAT.org, RepublicanVotersAgainstTrump.org, either one. Just click on the donate button. We appreciate every dollar. I've got, to your exact point right there, Charlie, I want to talk about this swing vote and why it's important. And then my last thing, you mentioned Reince. So I feel like if people stayed for 40 minutes of listening to us blather, we can gossip a little bit about our former co-friend. Where does RVAT draw the line between don't vote for Trump and support Biden? That's from Jonathan. I'm going to answer that, but then I want to kick it to you on why this is important. We purposely named the group Republican Voters Against Trump because we wanted the coalition to include people who were Republicans, who were against Trump, but couldn't get there on Biden for one reason or another. Now, that's not me. I want Joe Biden to win. I have a Joe Biden T-shirt, and I don't think that's Bill or Sarah or any of the people that started the group. But we recognize that it is a key swing demo, and for people out there, particularly in swing states, if you have friends who just can never get over the mental hurdle of saying I'm going to click for a Democrat, moving them from Donald Trump to just writing in the Pope, like my mom did last time, or writing in zombie Reagan or writing in whoever they want, Mitt Romney, that helps Joe Biden just as much as moving somebody who voted from Evan McMullin last time to Joe Biden does. Either way, that's a +1 in Biden's column. And so we want all those folks to be part of the coalition. So Charlie, to your point on that, 20% of the Trump voters last time, said they had an unfavorable view of him. It was a record number. Well, how important is this group, and how gettable is it in your view?
Yeah, I think they're gettable this time because last time, and I voted for Evan McMullin last time, but I didn't think there was any chance that Donald Trump was going to win. So right. what I did was I was able to say, hey, it's not my fault. I have clean hands, and that's the easiest place for a lot of Republicans to be, the anti-Trumpers, which is, yes, Donald Trump poses this existential threat to America, but I'm not actually going to do anything meaningful to remove him. So I will say that this was kind of a tough sell for me because I was on board with I'm against Trump, I'm voting against Trump, but to vote for Joe Biden, much, much tougher. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, I admire a lot about Joe Biden. I don't have any visceral sense of him, but I'm voting against Donald Trump. I'm not owning anything about Joe Biden. They're making me more comfortable with the choice. But remember back in the primary in 2016, I supported Ted Cruz over Donald Trump. And Ted Cruz was not my kind of guy. Yeah, okay. So, I mean, he was not a good fit here, but it was like that Donald Trump is so dangerous. So I do think that at some point, you have to recognize that, look, Donald Trump is either going to get 4 more years in office or he's not. And the only way he's not going to get 4 more years in office is if Joe Biden gets 270 electoral votes. It's as simple as that. I understand a lot of us would like to be able to walk away from this saying that we didn't dirty our hands and go over to the dark side because we'll be accused of all sorts of things as a result of that. But if this really is an emergency, let's act like it's an emergency.
All right, shout out to Rosanna, who, like Charlie, says that she's a McMullin Biden voter. Okay, and so I want to end with a little gossip. People stayed 40 minutes. They get that as a treat. One of the things I thought was powerful, and this is what I wrote this morning in the Bulwark about Miles, is that there are so many Miles in the administration. They're like hundreds of Miles.
Yes.
And they're all our friends. AJ Delgado, I don't know if she's listening, got a little mad at me because she's like, why are you giving him so much credit? There are a lot of rhinos like him in the administration who are never Trumpers. Like the real Trumpers who switch deserve credit. She's right. She does deserve credit. And I'm shouting her out. But Miles was notable because he's the first one who's left the administration and said, not only is all the terrible things you know true, it's actually worse than what you've heard. And as a result of that, I need to vote for Joe Biden, even though I don't like him. And I thought that's what was so powerful. What you say invasion of the body snatchers. You say Reince has been in there in that home. He's, I've been in his. He's somebody we spent a lot of time with together. Paul Ryan is somebody that you knew. Scott Walker is a guy that I consulted for that you knew. This was the future, this Wisconsin group.
Yeah.
What happened to those guys? Why can't any of them have the same backbone as Miles?
Okay, how much time do we have here?
We have as much time as you want.
I actually spent about an hour yesterday talking about that question with Craig Gilbert from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, because he knows all these guys, and how amazing it is if you think back to where we were back in 2015, just 5 years ago. Paul Ryan was, and I thought he was the future of the party. Scott Walker was this rising reformer. Ron Johnson was going to be Bill Proxmire of the right and all of those things. And Reince Priebus was the guy who was going to have the autopsy and make the Republican Party all of it gone. So I'll be honest with you. I find the whole thing disconcerting. I find it disillusioning. I find it soul crushing. A lot of this is people. We talk a lot about thought leaders and political leaders. I think right now in the modern Republican Party, a lot of the people we think of as leaders are really followers. They're following the base. They're afraid of the base. And here's the other problem. You start making compromises about fundamental principles. The first one is hard. The second one is still hard. Third one gets easier and easier and easier. And you start rationalizing, carving off, small, larger and larger chunks of your soul. And I don't know.
Do any of them call you? Any of your old Wisconsin Republican crowds? Do you ever hear from any of them?
I hear from some of them, but what I often say, particularly with Paul Ryan, I would like to remain friends with Paul Ryan, is that we're taking a break from one another and seeing other people. We're taking a break and seeing other people. But what I don't understand has been, it's one thing to say, okay, I don't like the way he behaves, but I'm in favor of the conservative principles. I think some of these Wisconsin politicians, like Walker and Johnson, have become cultists. And that's
Walker likes it, almost seems like. Walker almost feels jealous and wishes that he could be as cutting and mean and get the retweets. It almost feels like that, right?
Well, it feels like he's decided he wants to grow up to be Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
I mean that's the shocking thing. Here's a 2-term governor of the state of Wisconsin, presidential candidate, and with every tweet, he's like, really? This is what you really want to do? And of course, Ron Johnson, here we're in the midst of this.
It's bizarre. He could be on a board. Like he's a couldn't he be on a board or something?
Well, but see, here's the thing about Wisconsin. I think there is and I'm going to cling to this at least through November, okay? Because there's a fundamental decency about Wisconsin voters. I've always thought that. I think they have been locked in politics, understand what we've gone through. We feel that we have been at the epicenter of American politics since 2010. So the voters in this state have gone through a lot. They've seen a lot. They are very engaged. And I think they're very, very savvy. So I can't imagine that they are not watching Donald Trump and seeing the things that we are seeing, that they're watching the QAnon stuff. They're watching the corruption. They're watching the embrace of cruelty. They have to ask themselves, what is really going on? How did we get from where we used to be or what we told ourselves we were to now? And by the way, can I just make one more point on the one-on-one communication? I'm on MSNBC a lot, and I think they talk in code to each other because that's a bubble. So they'll sit and say, well, Donald Trump is racist and he's xenophobic and he's all these things. Yes, all true. But I mean, just saying the words, I don't think penetrates the bubble. I think you need to be very specific. I think, for example, when the president embraces QAnon or he embraces somebody like Laura Loomer, tell people what that is. But Laura Loomer, when she saw a tweet that 2,000 people had died, migrants had died on the Mediterranean, her tweet was
with a picture of a dead baby.
Yeah, clapping, saying 2,000 more, 2,000 more. When a white nationalist terrorist murdered 51 people in New Zealand, she went on social media and said, I don't care. She refers to them as savages. She talks about having Uber being, there should be a non-Muslim version of all of that. See, because make it specific. Say, look, this is not who you are. This kind of cruelty, this kind of just pure, relishing human suffering is not who you are or who you want to be. And yet, look at what she says. And look at the fact that the president of the United States is embracing her. Do you really want to be associated with that? Do you really want 4 more years of that? So I think sometimes being specific helps. Don't rely on the
Charlie, you're so right. And sometimes it's hard to remember all the crazy stuff. And it's like, go through the videos, write down, a couple of specific items. I could not agree more. It's something I do before I go on TV. I try to remember a couple specific things. I do think it's more persuasive. Charlie, thank you for switching seats with me and being in the hot seat. I'm always grateful to be on your podcast. I'm going to read one final thing from Peter in the comments, which I really loved. Peter said, I've been a Democrat all along since Trump came to power and exposure to RVAT and the Bulwark. I realized maybe I've been a Republican all along and feel more at home with you guys. Anybody else feel that way? So we're not alone. We are not alone. We're making new friends. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Deb and Mark. RVAT.org. Pitch in a few bucks, retweet us, share us, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you all so much. We'll see you next week. Maybe with a special guest and we can make some news. Talk to y'all later.